I'd like to welcome everyone to our 1 o'clock meeting. I'm Gilbert, David Wilson here to discuss the landfill expansion and the new landfill building. We were all given this packet ahead of time to review, and we'll just talk about the future of the landfill. So, Randy, if you would like to
All right.
present.
Well, hopefully when you read through that, you didn't find major flaws. Sometimes when you write something up and you had it for so long, you don't realize that you created a piece of garbage because you keep reading over the same thing. So hopefully it was useful for you. I put together a short PowerPoint presentation to try and help walk through all the information that's in that report. And once I get through this, or if I don't, because we're discussing it, that's fine. This is intended to be a guide for us to help walk through that report and answer any questions you have in relation to any of the information I've presented or will be presented. This report is a response to the direction I received from the Commission multiple times over the last 6-9 months, possibly longer than that. Primary goals: reduce the property tax assessment that was increased in October of 2011, along with the tipping fee at the landfill as a result of the impending lack of funds at the landfill. Those have not been increased in years, I understand, previous to that, and additional funds were needed to continue operation of the landfill. Second charge was to improve the landfill operational efficiencies. David and I have been working on that over the last year. We've made some improvements. There are still a ways to go. We're also finding that as we go and the further along we go, the EPA is ratcheting up a little bit on their compliance inspections with us, asking us to do more, and we are responding to those, but that is, we have a ways to go. It's a continuous improvement type situation. We will always be striving to do better. The third charge: operate the landfill as a business. I think we all know that landfills in the private sector are considered a license to print money. They're a very profitable operation for private enterprises. Obviously, as a governmental agency, we're not in the business to make a profit, but we are in the business to at least break even and provide a service to our customers, which are the taxpayers of Preble County. This is an example. This is our projected revenue for 2014. Our tipping fee, which is based on budgeted for 29,000 tons this year, $1.1 million. The property tax assessment, on the other hand, is $1.9 million. It's almost 2/3 of our budget comes from taxes. If we want to reduce that tax assessment, we have got to come up with additional revenues. We can't just increase the tipping fee because we've already required all trash from Preble County to come to the landfill. So if we increase the tipping fee and reduce the tax assessment, we're just taking it out of one pocket from our residents and instead of the other. So it's a wash. It doesn't do us any good. So really the only options we have to increase revenues are get new industry into the community that would generate more waste, more citizens moving in, which would generate more waste, which neither one of those can you as the commissioners or myself control. That's up to the wishes and desires of corporate executives and or citizens to move into the county. So the only thing we can really control is what we do with the landfill. And that leaves the option of bringing in waste from out of town or from out of county. It's the only source of new revenue that we would possibly have. Current landfill life expectancy, as it sits today, roughly 52 years at our current rate of fill of 111 tons per day. At our max rate of fill of 195 tons, that's our permitted rate, and that's more based upon how much we're willing to send to EPA every year. 200 tons is the step. Over 200 tons a day, you pay a higher fee to the EPA. So our permit says 195, so we stay under the 200-ton limit. That steps us into the next range as far as a fee, but all we'd have to do to change it is send in an application and more money.
But we would want to do that unless we were actually generating more money.
Correct. Absolutely. And in my tenure here, there have only been a couple of days where we've even approached the 195. So we had to start being concerned. And I threw up another one there. You'll see this number later. 500 tons a day. Our current landfill would have 12 years of life at 500 tons a day. Obviously, as we sit today, with the way things are, we would not want to increase the tonnage to that rate. The landfill would be short-lived, and we would lose the valuable asset to the community. For those that aren't fully aware, our landfill property starts down here at this corner, 127, comes across this fence row, generally up this fence line, kind of works its way across here, across this property line, up through here, along Camden Road, and generally follows this tree line along here, and then somehow, not exactly sure where the line is, I didn't draw it on here, comes across here back to 127 and back down. The existing footprint of the landfill is this shoe shape right here. We own, Preble County owns approximately 438 acres. Of that 438 acres, 52 acres of it are currently within the permitted boundaries of the landfill. Gives us a lot of room to expand. We had our consultant look at what we could potentially do for an expansion. Outlined in red there is the existing landfill footprint. It doesn't show up as well as I had hoped, but this light blue over here is a proposed western expansion. That essentially goes into the borrow pit area that we currently have west of the landfill. And right along this general old property line are the high tension wires that come down through the property. They actually come down through the property, come to there, and cut through out this direction. The other potential for expansion is to the south into that field. And actually that provides us with a phenomenal amount of space. That area would be dug down, so we would start below grade with the fill and then come back up. And then the last fill would be what we're calling the valley fill, which would essentially take the area, we end up with two mounds for landfill, and we'd be filling in that valley and laying back across. So we would end up with a ridge that would essentially run around this way on the completed landfill. Now, what does all that fill give us? Well, if we were to do that expansion, at our existing rate of fill, we have 509 years roughly of life. That's not taking into account the effects that the slow rate of fill, the settlement that would occur in the landfill over that amount of time as the garbage degrades. I'm sure that number would be a little higher. As you work across here, at our maximum permit, we'd have 290 years. At 500 tons, we're 113. years of life. To me, that is the max that we should push for or try and go for. One, it puts it way out, 100 plus years. I can't believe we're going to be doing much landfilling in 100 years. Technologies will be improving over time. While I believe there will always be a need for a landfill, by that point in time, I believe we're probably going to start mining existing landfills for materials, raw materials that are in them. Obviously, we don't want to come out here to 300 tons or 3,000 tons a day. Even the expanded landfill is gone in less than 20 years. Our current tipping fee looks like this. Total $40 a ton. Landfill operations only gets $18.79 of that. Financial assurance, $6.77 at the current configuration that we have. And that financial assurance is the dollars required to end up with $13 million, roughly $13 million at the point in time when the landfill is closed. That is to cover the closure of the final cell when after the last trash truck comes through the gate, and to cover the 30 years of post-closure care that we're required to do. EPA fees are $4.75 a ton. The two fees there for the solid waste district, $9.44, and then Gasper Township gets $0.25 a ton. This table represents, again, this is based upon 500 tons a day rate. But changing the fees to establish a base rate, and this is showing $22 a ton, with then all of the add-ons that would be there for either in-county or out-of-county waste. This one shows the $22 for the EPA fees, township fees, out-of-district charge for the solid waste district fees, financial assurance. One of the advantages of expanding the landfill, by expanding the landfill to its maximum size, we're not really increasing the closure costs. There would be a slight increase. There would be a couple more wells that would have to be installed over time that would then have to be monitored after the closure of the landfill. But the change in the total fee that we have to have in the bank on the day of closure isn't going to change more than a few $100,000. The beauty of that is that $13 million gets divided over a whole lot more tons. So the unit cost goes way down. I've shown $1.50 here. It's actually probably more like 80 cents or 60 cents, substantially less, but there are some variances in the way that that's calculated by the EPA from what I was doing that would drive that number up a little higher. So I've used $1.50 here as an example. That's really something that once we get into the permitting process, that number would be finalized. As you notice, I've got out-of-county MSW rate, which would be the trucks, route trucks coming in. Transfer loads would be those loads coming from another transfer facility where the EPA fees have already been collected. And then you work down through there. If you get down to the in-county MSW rate there, second from the bottom, $37.94. It's less than our current 40. Now, this table is more than anything to show where we would expect the transfer the rates to go to. Should changes be made immediately, we could not immediately institute a change in rate for in-county residents until the out-of-county waste comes up. Because there's a fixed dollar amount we need to run landfill. But as we would increase the out-of-county waste, the in-county rates could be dropped to bring them more in line together so that savings can be passed on to the residents. The other thing to throw in here is out-of-county rates. That out-of-county rate of $29.50, that becomes a base rate of sorts because every other county that might come to us has their own solid waste district contract fees. And we would have to add that on by county because we would have to collect that and then send it back to Butler County, Montgomery County, Dart County. They've all got a different number that we'd have to collect and send. So their rate would be $29.50 plus. That's what that last note on the bottom is referring to. If you look here, this table shows what the potential reduced cost to the county would be. I've used 3 different base rates, $20, $22, and $24 a ton. And if you look here, the 350 to 500 ton a day, those are the dollars that would be coming in excess of our expenses. It could then be applied towards either equipment, paying down debt, and reducing the tax assessment. And you notice that this one is almost getting to the total tax assessment income. One other item, the calculations I have used for construction of landfill space in the tables is a little higher than we typically have been utilizing. I've used a construction rate based upon hiring the construction to be done versus doing it with our own forces. We're slightly more than half the cost by doing it with our own forces. So again, that's additional money that could be added to these boxes. But I don't want to overpromise anything. Cost to expand the landfill, exclusive of actual construction cost, because I've used $400,000 per acre as the construction cost. That gets taken out of the rates for the waste coming in, so I did not add that in here. But the costs we've got are engineering cost to prepare the PTI application to the EPA, a landfill tipper. If you don't know what that is, essentially it is a big piece of equipment that picks up a semi-trailer and dumps it. Big piece of equipment, big price. There would also be some in-house costs to relocate the wetland. Required capital improvements. This is required regardless of whether the landfill is expanded or we stay the way we are. And that's relocating the scale, which includes administration, building, and maintenance facility. That cost is estimated at $1.5 million. That does represent an increase from the last time I was here and told you it was 1.3.
Okay, I was going to ask, it's a different number. I didn't
Yes.
actually realize, I thought it was the same number. I realized it actually increased.
It increased because of some research we've done and talking with ODOT. There are some requirements for part of this is relocating the entrance to the landfill. The requirements from ODOT for an access drive attaching to 127 for grades that come off of it for certain distances greatly increased the amount of fill required for that area that we had not anticipated in the original estimate.
And you'd have to bring the fill in?
No.
So it's our fill?
It's our fill, it just has to be moved. The cost that we have there is based on contractors doing the work. Again, timing-wise, we would hope to be able to do that in-house and save a substantial portion of it, but again, I don't want to overpromise. If timing gets us into an issue and we have to have a contractor do it, I needed enough money in the estimate to cover it. This is a schedule that we put together. Top green line up here represents the amount of waste that we will be able to place. I should back up just a slight amount. The two green lines represent the amount of waste that following completion of the construction contract that we hope to bring to you later this week. We will be able to certify the waste placement around to the west. Once that's all certified, we will have about a year, 2.5 years of space left for placement of waste. However, if we choose to do an expansion, that western berm gets relocated. That drops us back to about 1.5 years of certified space. So to a certain extent, we're coming into a timing issue. The other item on here, this is building the said pond. This is relocating the wetland, which will be required as part of the obtaining the PTI for expansion. This red line here, that's a critical path item. That is building the confluence on the east end of the landfill, immediately behind the scale and admin buildings, that we can't do until we relocate the scale. Down here is the time frame for PTI application preparation and approval. This line represents probably the earliest that we would gain approval. This is the range that the approval will probably take place in. These three lines represent scale replacement relocation project. Bid document preps, bidding, actual construction. You notice it's running out here to June of next year, right up to construction season for next year, when we have to start on that confluence. The building scale relocation is now on the critical path. Something that has to be done. Doesn't matter whether we're staying the size we are at the landfill or whether we're expanding. We've reached the point where we've got to move forward on that. These items down here are related to expansion. This one is obtaining some commitments from haulers. Let me back up just slightly. I have been in contact with both Montgomery County and Rumpke concerning them bringing transfer loads of waste to the landfill. Currently, there are 200 tons a day going right down 127 past our gates from the Greenville transfer facility to the Rumpke's Coleraine landfill. Rumpke said with $4 a gallon fuel, they're willing to talk to us about taking a right turn into the landfill if the price is right. If it can make sense to them. It cuts their trip in half. We've run some calculations and they're in the report to show what we think those costs might be. Unfortunately, we don't have all of their information, so all we can do is make a guess. An educated guess, but still a guess. But I think that $22 to $24 a ton base rate might work for them. But we can't start accepting transfer load rates for transfer loads until one, we've got our PTI, which would be in this time period for expansion, and two, we buy a tipper. That's the approximate time period it would take to purchase a tipper.
So at that point, before we can even accept the
Tran-
trash, the transfers coming down 127, we would have to spend the PTI money, which was $900,000.
Yes.
Well, the tipper was included in that.
Yes, the tipper was included in that. Yes. Now, this could be backed up. If we're confident and everything's looking good, we could move that forward or back, however we want to look at it, and start the process of buying a tipper sooner. If we were able to find a used tipper that was in good condition, obviously we'd probably take delivery of that a lot sooner. But between the time to build and then the bidding process that's required that we go through, we're talking almost a year to obtain a tipper from the time we decide to start. Which moves the this red block out here is when we start accepting transfer loads. Now there is the option, potentially Rumpke could bring in a load a day. They have one remaining walking floor trailer in their fleet of transfer trucks. Walking floor just means the floor moves and it will unload itself. And if we said yes to outside of county waste, they could show up tomorrow with it in theory. Which 20 tons a day added to our rate would, it's more income to us. Help pay for some of the costs along the way, but there are limitations to what can be done. This table represents the existing debt load at the landfill. As you can see, we've got the existing capital bonds, including this year. There are 3 years to pay for those. General fund repayment, $100,000 a year. And I shortened this. Actually, it's scheduled to be 2017. It's $100,000 in 1831. You might be able to close that out in 17 based on, depending on how finances go. OWPC leachate loan, that's a 0% loan from OWPC, so there's really no reason to mess with that one right now. It's $75,000 a year, and we're more than making up for that in our savings on leachate. The loader note, 4 years remaining on that. Bottom line, we have a annual debt payment of this year just under $625, and in 2015, just over $626,000. Jumping to table 13 in the report, which is a summary of all the other tables in there that I did not want to belabor unless you want to go through them. You jump down to the bottom, we can finance the construction of the scale replacement project, the cost of the expansion, refinance the last 2 years of the current capital debt that we have, and end up with a budgetary savings of $178,000 a year. Notice we went from 623 down to 444. That $178,000 pay for another piece of major equipment on an annual short-term debt. Pay for early payment of some of the debt load. It can be utilized in a lot of different ways, but the net impact is on a $3.6 million, almost $3.7 million budget. That's a fairly substantial savings. I see a question coming.
How do we owe more money yet our debt payment is less? How did that work exactly?
Part of it is involved with the existing two capital debt payments are at a higher interest rate than what would be currently available to us, or what I
Okay. So
believe to be currently available to us.
interest rate change?
Interest rate change. Two, you are taking those two payments, spreading them out again. That also has an
Okay.
impact.
All right.
There's different philosophies about that. That's why you'll see the one table in there. I think it's table 10,
What page would that be on?
20 of 24. Table 10 shows what happens if we do not refinance the existing capital bonds, and it shows financing each particular piece of debt independently. You end up with, in 2015, the potential of $851,000 in debt payments, an increase to the budget of $227,000, almost $228,000. That would be difficult to absorb, particularly in 2015, as we would not be receiving much in the way of extra waste at that point to offset that expense.
Yeah, when is the extra waste coming according to your chart? What, 2017?
17, whoops, let me go back. All right, this is,
Into 2016?
yeah, into 2016. Now, if route trucks would start showing up, we could get some more, but that would not be, I would not anticipate that being a large volume coming from route trucks. It might get us up to the 200 ton a day from route trucks from the surrounding counties. It would come here rather than the different.
Because I noticed that the 200 ton, the charts in here showed that it would bring in an extra $1 million if we were at our 200 ton.
Don't remember
The
that exact number.
195.
I got 716 at the highest, 716,000.
Okay, I was thinking it was.
If you're
Well,
referring to
it was-
this,
yeah.
yeah, if you're referring to this table 3
What page
on
is that?
12,
That wasn't the one, but go ahead.
okay. Oh, you got the, on their side. So that is the end of my presentation here. At this point, I'm open to questions concerning the report, details in it.
The wells included was the, I know the 1.5 million you said with the landfill, the scales, that's the 2 buildings.
That's
What are the
the,
specifications for them, or has that changed since last time?
that has not changed. That still shows. Well, it's everything except for the final total on the contingencies down there. Again, we still got the 5 options for the scale house, the admin building, and the maintenance facility.
getting your prices? Like, where are you getting 410,000 for the maintenance facility with the locker room?
That's based upon estimate from, looking at costs on that we had for the leachate facility, some discussions with Broomball Construction. It also had a discussion with, there is some question as to whether or not the $410,000 is enough for the size of the building that we have. Name escaping me, David, the gentleman we met with. Yeah, Mr. Buckley.
And this is a cement walls, this is not a steel building?
No, the $410,000 for the maintenance facility is a steel building.
It is a steel building?
It is a steel building, probably 16-foot, maybe 18-foot eaves. So we had at least a 14-foot door. So it's a tall structure, and that drives part of the cost. It's roughly 60 by 90 is what we're hoping for. If 410,000 doesn't cover a 60 by 90, we'll drop it down to 60 by something. With provision for expansion at some point in the future, should we be able to afford it.
And is there a reason why you didn't do one building with the offices in the front?
Primary reason for that is trying to keep the landfill vehicles away from the parking areas for the administration building. Not wanting to tear up pavement, keep them closer to the face, onto roads that are gravel.
Right.
Roads around the administration building and the scales need to be paved so we can control dust and dirt drag out onto the 127.
And that could be divided at the end where the equipment comes in, we could face the landfill, and then the other portion could face 127.
There is, yes. However, where we're putting the building, that increases the building pad and increases the fill that we have to move to build it up. So it's a balancing act. We've got this laid out at this point. It's not to say it's a final arrangement. Once we get into actually putting together bid specifications and options for contractors, we will be trying to optimize our costs.
What's this fast track? If the decision was made to increase the footprint, you're looking at a year and a half to 2 years before we're probably be able to receive that waste, any additional waste, any significant volume.
Significant volumes, yes.
And your feeling with talking to the surrounding counties and entities that might participate, you're somewhere, the base rate needs to be somewhere that $22 to $24
Yes,
per ton.
somewhere in that range. Transportation costs, and, in the report I went through some scenarios on transportation costs, how those are reflected or compared to Montgomery County's recent contract for taking waste both to the Stony Hollow landfill and also the landfill in Logan County. It was very interesting that the rate for disposal varies, but it ends up with the transportation cost being roughly the same dollar when you add it all in together. So we would have to be in that same ballpark with our total number as well. And I think we would get there.
Is there, is it possible that we can do this landfill, moving the scales in phases? In that we could do the scale house and the scales, and then once we start seeing some income coming in, then go and build the maintenance, the $400,000 maintenance building?
Not
Because you
really.
have nothing right now.
You're
You
right.
have no cover whatsoever, and I do have a lot of sympathy, especially in this winter, for the guys at the landfill who have to work in those conditions. But,
Let me show you some pictures. This is this winter, we had to try and get our truck in that dumps the floor units. We were able to get it started, but the hydraulics were all froze up. So we had to be very creative on trying to get the truck partially into the building and try to heat it up. You'll notice that the door's been closed down just behind the cab. Cardboard put it around as best we could to try and seal it up. But with the cold weather, we had, I don't know how much time. I know we spent, 24 hours of manpower just trying to get that truck running one day. Or not one day, over 2 days.
and I, like I said.
That is our need for a maintenance facility.
I empathize with this because the same picture I could have taken in my house over the weekend where my husband had half his truck backed into our too small garage working on his truck, so.
Move your car out of the way next time.
No, my car was not in the garage.
The problem with doing that is the building is also in the way for the construction of the confluence.
Right.
So essentially, we would lose what little we have for maintenance shop. The other concern on that is, the longer you wait to build, the more it costs you to do it. Prices continue to go up, but there's also this, you have the flip side of that, when can you afford it? At this point in time, I think by going in and financing it all, we're actually lowering the debt load on the landfill. I believe we would be better off to go ahead and do it in one fell swoop. I think we would actually save money by building 2 buildings at once, rather than splitting it up. Contractor would be on site, moves his crew from pouring concrete right over to the next one, pour the next set of concrete. He's not mobilizing twice to do that. There are savings involved in doing it at the same time.
You made the statement that the closure assurance monies would not be needed to be increased drastically.
No, we don't, a few $100,000, which compared to 13 million is, right now the closure costs are just under 13 million. They would be just over 13 million with the, or right at or 13 million with the increased landfill space. We're adding a couple of wells, and really the long-term cost, those wells are part of the construction, so you see those costs as you're building the cells. So when you get to the closure, it's just 2 or 3 more wells that you are testing, and that's a pretty minor cost in the scheme of things.
And you also stated that the wetlands would have to be relocated.
Yes.
Is that included in the cost somewhere?
That is not listed as a cost, as we were planning to do that in-house. It would actually be part of the construction of set pond number 2. This green pond that you see here is the wetland, and the wetland essentially is this whole area with its buffer area. With the expansion coming across here and then across here, we're cutting it off. Our permit says we will have 10 acres of wetland plus upland boundary buffer area. What we have looked at is running our set pond across here this way, just on the north side of the expansion. We would leave a portion of this wetland in place that is establishing very well up in this north end. Now we would move the rest of the wetland over here into this area, with this existing pond being kind of a discharge point for the wetland. That does take that farmland out of production, convert that to a wetland, but that is property we own.
Is that a house then?
Yes,
Is that the house that we rent?
yes, that's one of two that are rented. We also rent this one right here. So yes, we would be taking dirt from here, building the set pond. It's required up in this area. Creates a short haul for us, so it'd be very cost effective for us to do. And then next spring, we would have to spend in the neighborhood of about $10,000, that's a little higher than what we spent the first time around, to plant what most farmers around here would call weeds, the wetland plants.
While you've got that picture up there, Randy, can you show me once again the driveway where you would propose it to be, and the maintenance building and the administration building?
Sure. There's as you come down 127, there's a high spot about right here. So we would propose coming off about there, coming straight back across. The building and scales would be here, the maintenance facility would be about here, and we would tie into this existing road going around the landfill. There would also, we believe we would probably be able to set in a short drive here between the new drive and the customer convenience area, so that they can go straight to it instead of having to go around to get to it from its current entrance.
Yeah, last time we talked, we were going to use the existing driveway. What happened to that? Because of the viewpoint, from leaving the existing driveway, you're able to see north.
What's caused that is we've got a power line running right through here, and trying to get the clearance over that power line and getting everything arranged, get down underneath the power line so we've got appropriate clearance. Get ourselves oriented correctly so that we can get a scale in here with the required approaches and on both ends. It gets a little tight. We don't end up with enough space out here. And looking at it, actually the best vision is about right here at that high spot. You can see both directions very well. We have the give transfer trucks, larger vehicles, a better chance of pulling out into clear traffic rather than having issues with potential accidents, people not seeing somebody pulling out in front of them. But that is what's caused the change in the fill.
Okay, because maybe last time we talked, right, the fill wasn't good.
Correct.
Okay, so,
I appreciate you going through and getting the figures here, Randy. I think we asked you a while back to reduce the residents' rates. And we knew that the life of this PTI was coming to its end, and we needed to expand. And I appreciate that. I appreciate everything you've done here. I guess my total concern, though, is I think versus 12 years ago when the residents said to close the landfill off to just Preble County, we can see with the added increase to our assessments that really is not going to work long term because our costs are only going to continue rising.
That is correct.
And I don't want that to happen again to our residents. I would like to see that assessment come back down. So I agree that we should bring in more waste, from Dark County, or subsidize a little bit so our residents, so the rates will go down. I understand about the scales. The scales, we need to get in the scales that you can put a semi across.
Correct.
And whether there's a good used one out there, or whether you even get those, I know the scales are very costly.
Scales have a limited lifespan, about 20 years. I would really hate to spend the money for a used one, and then have to go right back out there again.
Okay.
We're better off to buy a new one from the start, set it up properly, maintain it, and get our lifespan out of it.
I understand, I'm not gonna, delay that point too much, but the maintenance building, we've talked for years, we need a maintenance building where we can get that big equipment in to service it. And with bringing in more trash, it'll be even more critical to make sure we get it in and back operating as soon as possible, if we don't have a backup for that piece of equipment.
Correct.
And I understand that the BOMAG, you will be wanting to purchase a new one here in a couple of years, or somewhere down the road there, because ours is reaching its 10,000 hours, closing in on it.
Yes, and that is one thing that I went to the MOLO course, Manager Landfill Operation course, last week to maintain my certification. And that was one of the topics. Apparently BOMAGs work great at 10,000 hours, but after that, major things start going wrong, major expensive things. But that's something that the other landfills that, because I asked them, I said, are you guys using harder than we do? Is that why you're so down on them? He said, no, they run great up to 10,000 hours and then they fall apart. As opposed to some of the other brands.
But I do think we do need a maintenance building. But where I always come back scratching my head is exactly what do we need for an administrative building at this point. We visited 6 landfills last year, and a lot of them, on their approach to the scales, just had one of those modular buildings that seemed to work pretty good. And then a lot of times the administration building was a little ways from that. And that's why I still come back to utilizing the house that's down there already. And, we've talked about how many offices we need in that house. I understand it's not ideal, but I think it could work. And if and when down the road we see that all this trash is coming in, then we could still build in a couple of years. Maybe 3 or 4 years, once the money's in the bank. But then I also come back to showing how you refinance and how the cost would be lower. So I'm taking all that into consideration. I'm still thinking that part over. You're talking about with the scales being right there at the administration building.
Correct.
And them still coming in,
Yes, it would be
having a limited access.
admin building scale house combination is essentially what we're talking about. Now, should the truck traffic, i.e. route trucks primarily, or residential type traffic pick up, there is the potential that sometime in the future we might need to put in a second scale. So we have an in and out scale. And at that point, we would need a photo booth type scale house in between the two of them.
Which is why if we plan for that now, we wouldn't have the added expense of recreating the wheel. If we plan for the photo booth, room on either side.
Well, the photo booth would be between the two scales,
Right.
and it would operate in and out.
Right.
You're talking less than 100 square foot of the admin building, well, a little more than 100 square foot of the admin building devoted to the scale operation. The admin building that we have proposed is 27 to 3,000 square feet.
Is it long and skinny? Because how would you put a scale on the other side?
No, the
If
the
your
scale,
scale house is
if
in
the
that
scale,
building.
Well, if we're only running one scale, it only needs to be on one side.
Well, but,
If we run the second scale, yes, there would be a photo booth in between them.
okay, so you would say, you're thinking admin house, scale, taking in the cash, scale, so you need a new scale, new little building, and then the other scale on the other side of that.
Correct. And the main reason for that is the way we're set up right now. Our scale operator is also our clerical person, takes care of all the filing, takes care of all the bill paying, answers the phones, does multiple things. Having them out in their own little building, away from everyone else, prevents them from being able to do all the administrative functions that they do right now for the landfill. They just would not be available to David or anyone else to be able to handle those details on a regular basis. That's why I look for one building. Truthfully, it'd be much better for me to be in the same building with David and the rest of them. 'Cause I'll be honest, I sit over there in the other building, or in the house nowadays. I can sit over there all day long, and unless David or I think about calling the other, things go on that neither one of us knows about. It's not necessarily a good situation. We work with it, we work around it as best we can. But at times, things are going on that I don't know are happening that I should be involved with, but David's so busy dealing with it that he doesn't even think to call me. So, if I was in the same building, it'd be a whole lot easier. Hey, Randy, and out,
That's
so
no
let's go
question.
take care of it.
I
So.
know what you're saying.
Anything else? Looks like we have some visitors that might want to talk, speak to this and address this. You guys didn't have, you don't have this yet. You need a copy of this, we can make a copy. It's got a lot of information in it, but is there anyone in the audience want to address anything to say?
I would just mention, I think, oh,
You know the rules.
oh, well, the podium wasn't where it normally is.
Well, just talk to one of these microphones.
As I'm sure David recalls, about 12 years ago, we went through something similar, trying to solve this problem, and when they started raising it hundreds of tons, and you're talking, what, 500 tons? Is that what we're looking at, or is it still an open thing?
500 tons is what I'm projecting, or proposing as our max day. The reality of life is we probably get somewhere in the neighborhood of 420 is kind of the goal we would have.
And I have no idea, having gone through a decade of people paying assessments and then 44% increase on the assessment, what the opposition might be on that. But I think Dave and Connie can speak to the fact that the chambers here got packed by people not wanting what they perceive as a mega landfill.
Yes, I understand it. I've seen some of the documents from that.
Yeah.
The cost saving thing?
We got a couple, we got a Gasper trustee and a Gasper resident back there that they would be more likely to have comments on that, but that's something that I think we need to be aware of, a possibility before we start down the road too far. I agree, when we have passed the assessments that we need to start taking in some more outside tonnage, but when we passed the flow control was more to keep the county trash here because the rates were so high, we didn't want people out of the county. So it's more for that effect than the idea we don't want any outside trash. I don't think that was ever, in my mind, the total reason for the opposition in the first place. We were going from, what was it, 42,000 tons a year expected to, we dropped down to 29,000 now.
Yes.
And when I say getting back up and taking in more, we're talking 50,000, you're talking 500, about a 500% increase per day possibly, if you get, 400 if you do 400. I don't know if that'll cause problems or not, but I think another point I'd like to ask is that this document and maybe the PowerPoint presentation be put on the county website so people can look at it in advance instead of speculating on something that they can't look at and letting it get out of control before possibly it needs to be. As far as the buildings, I think we're very lucky this winter to have a very cold winter. I think everybody will sympathize with the maintenance building, and I certainly would. What the cost is, I don't know, but I perfectly understand increasing the line of trash. It's just going from, 29,000 to 500 tons a day, 400 or 500 tons a day. There's a reason that traffic's going by the landfill right now. It's too expensive to drop it there. I don't think, would anybody really object to them? I've heard you say recently, in the last couple of years, the flow control is to keep it out. It was more to keep it in, is why it was instituted.
Yeah. Preble County's trash and Preble County's landfill.
Yeah, but that was the argument.
My understanding is we currently have both flow control that it has to stay in Preble County, but we also have an exclusion with that.
That you can't bring anything.
Is that the way the resolution reads, Connie? I actually meant to ask for the copy of the resolution.
I know that's the way the policy, the solid waste plan reads.
Well, we need to read the resolution.
I'll take your word for it. I just know what the reason, my view on why it was originally instituted was because the rates got so high, Rumpke started going down 127 right by. And I think, that's the perception that's out there, wasn't to keep any outside trash coming in. We just didn't want to go from enough to make it feasible for Preble County to a mega landfill. You're talking about 100 years. I don't know that anybody wants to run 100 years. We're going to find out, I'm sure. But if you could make these documents available online so people can look at them, I think it would probably help your case. And probably ask the people of Gasper. That's where a lot of the opposition came
One of
from.
my understandings of the discussion in 2003,
Yeah, July 2003, there's a lawsuit.
there was somewhere in the neighborhood, whoever was coming, Allied, I think it was coming in, was wanting to put 3,000 tons a day in the landfill.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I put that out there
Thank
and
you
showed the
for bringing
19
that-
years.
Thank you for bringing that
That's just unreasonable for us as a county to,
Yeah, see, I forgot. the
Waste our
3,000. That's a
landfill
great deal. You
space.
made more than
That sounds more
500.
mega.
Yeah, that's a great deal more than the 500.
And Jeff, also what Randy's been proposing really takes no more effort from our equipment, machinery,
Sure.
or staff.
And I got that, and I would have to, I could listen, when I was listening to the audio, there's much larger landfills that be operating with the same staff. I appreciate that. I think the only other issue might be expanding the size, in Gasper. You guys might want to speak up if you don't have any opposition to that.
Since you asked.
Since I asked, well, they need to know.
Jeff,
Well, personally, not as a
would you like
gas.
to introduce yourself, sir?
Yeah, Eric White. Personally is just Eric White, not a Gasper Township trustee. I would fight you tooth and nail for expansion to the south on the corner of Man and 127. I really don't like any expansion at all. As a business person, got yourself in a mess. You're not going to get out of it. We're always going to have the assessment. And I mean, like if you look at it, if it wasn't for the assessment, Preble County basically bankrupt because of this landfill. It was a bad idea then, it's a bad idea to expand it now. Another thing that you look at too is you talk about, talking to Rumpke's about bringing that trash in. When you got the contract set there at the dotted line, then it'd be different, but Rumpke's will play hardball with you. And everybody's mentioned Bestway of Indiana. What are we going to do is, if we open it up, does the flow control go away? Do you have Bestway to compete with in Murdoch, Indiana? And we've seen our rate, but we haven't seen the other corresponding rates from other landfills. And I mean, I just think, I remember before I was a Gasper Township trustee, some 20-some years ago, when the landfill, 25 cents a ton. They were going to be plowing the road down there with gold plows. And it sounded awful good, but it's, I would gladly give the $8,000 a year back if I didn't have the landfill in my township. And another thing is that you increase the size of the landfill, you got locking room 2 miles as the seagull flies from your landfill. And, I mean, anytime you go around a landfill, the ones you toured,
Well, I was gonna ask Randy, is that the point of the wetlands? To appease the seagulls? Because every landfill we went to had seagulls. Whether you heard the sea
Just
or
this time
not.
of year.
Huh?
They'll be gone here in a month.
They'll be gone in about 2 weeks.
What's that?
The seagulls.
The seagulls?
The
Okay.
buzzards will come in mid-March.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, but I wondered, I mean, that, to me, that's like, is that why they want the wetlands?
No.
To make sure that the seagulls have someplace to land?
When the last PTI was approved, for the last expansion, the improvements required were going to impact a .03 acre wetland. So we had to remediate that. As part of that remediation, the county engineer decided, well, you know, I'm disturbing wetlands all over the county. We'll build a bank here that I can use so that when I tear up a little wetland next to a bridge or one of my highway jobs, this is my remediation. Well, county engineer didn't participate in the cost of this, and the county engineer's no longer involved, so he's kind of lost that. But the result of that is, it got written into our permit that we would install 10 acres of wetland. That's now in our permit, we can't get out of it. We only needed to install less than a half an acre of wetland to remediate that small one that we disturbed,
And now we have it 10 acres in our.
and it has to be there.
since we talked about the 25 cents a ton, when's that gonna go up? You know, 25 cents just isn't what it was 20 years ago.
That
Don't you
25
think
cents
we ought
is,
to increase that?
that 25 cents a ton is mandated by state
Yes, I
requirements.
know it is.
It's written into Ohio Revised Code.
So Eric, so you don't, I mean, I kind of understand your point about Rumpke, because if we get in this situation
Rumpke will
Where
play
we have
hardball with
to-
you. Rumpke is ruthless.
where we have to take in more trash, because now we have gone down a path. And now we're desperate to take in trash. That does give a Rumpke an upper hand.
I wish
In
Gene Krebs was
negotiations.
still on the board just so I could say Bill Rumpke and watch him lose it. Because there's nothing that set him off more than Bill Rumpke. You'll be playing with the big boys.
As involves flow control, my recommendation is that we retain flow control, we eliminate the exclusion part of it. At least initially, until things would stabilize in the future. You're concerned about expending money and then needing it. The cost to build landfill space is somewhat of a fixed dollar amount per acre. It only needs to be built as you're needing it. If our rate of fill doesn't change, even though we get the permit for the expansion, we've expended $450 some thousand dollars to get the expansion. That's all we're out as far as upfront costs. The building of the space over time would only be built at the rate that we needed.
As the expansion is needed. Except that you said at 200 tons, what costs more? You said at 200 tons, something,
Oh, the permit fee goes up with the EPA.
okay, how much does it go up? I mean, is that a huge substantial amount? Because we're gonna be paying that as soon as we apply to expand.
Unless you
Only as soon as we apply for an expansion of our ANDWR, which is the maximum allowed per day. It would not necessarily go up just by, let me see what the number is
So
here.
only when we apply to go over the 200,
Yes.
then that's when the permit goes in and we have extra money to pay.
Yes, it goes from $12,700 to $30,000 annually.
Wow.
But that $30,000 is good up to 500 tons a
But at
day.
that point, we would know that we have more trash coming in and more income coming in.
Yes. Or at worst case, we apply for it for a year, and if it doesn't come, we pack ourselves back down.
Right, because if we get close a lot.
Yeah,
If we hit, as it is right now, if we hit 195, if we hit 200 now, we shut the doors. So you gotta
I was gonna
leave,
ask you what happens.
we have to leave ourselves a buffer,
Right.
100 tons, 80 tons,
So if we
somewhere.
consistently started getting 180 tons a day,
we'd have to make the step anyway.
okay.
The last time that happened, there was a company east of here that had a problem, and they started bringing in lots of stuff. And we exceeded, about exceeded the 195. and we had-
Actually, my understanding is it did exceed the 195, but we were able, landfill was able to get a temporary permit for exceeding that. EPA will work with you if you've got a special case like that, to adjust it temporarily.
Other than that, temporarily, since it's about 111 we're bringing in per day, if we open it up for other single trash trucks to come in from outside the county, we probably would exceed that. Still, 200, still.
I wouldn't expect to initially, but that's something that, until we start seeing them come in, we don't know. I mean, there are a lot of unknowns with this.
Right. So is there anybody else?
You know,
Jeff,
I'm coming. I can see why we're doing this, and congratulate you for going on this struggle. You obviously put a lot of time into it. But when we say we're going to keep the flow control to keep the trash in the town, it seems like there must be a realization already that somebody out there is lower cost than us. And if somebody out there is lower cost than us, there's no reason for the Montgomery or Rumpke or somebody else to haul to that place. What I'm getting at is, if you're keeping flow control to keep all our trash here, you're assuming that somebody might undercut our costs. And if they're going to undercut our costs, they can do it later on if you're presuming that you're going to get this 500 tons, unless you have some kind of agreement with Montgomery and Rumpke already.
The issue with that is, if I asked the commissioners today to pass a rate across the board that was level, that would attract outside waste, we would not receive enough money to maintain operations
Sure.
until a volume built up.
I get that.
So the flow control, the reason I'm proposing, at least initially, that the flow control remain, is that while we're offering a lower price to bring in the transfer loads to get ourselves up to that 420 tons or whatever it might stabilize at, once we get there, then we can take the rates that our residents pay and drop those down.
I think that's a great idea.
Again,
I hope
that's-
that comes to pass, because that
it's-
assessment is
you
now
know
a
that
drag on
the $1 million that
a
I
lot
was
of
showing,
Commercial especially.
Yes,
Yeah,
a lot of
the-
businesses. I agree with that.
the $1 million that I was showing up there as a profit,
Mhm.
we as a public entity are not allowed to make profit. We're allowed to cover our expenses, but we don't, that money essentially gets turned back by lowering the rates. We can cut the costs elsewhere, or cut the income elsewhere.
Well, you obviously put a lot of time into this and figuring this out.
All right, is there anybody else? All right, anything else, David, please?
Yes, my name's Vaughn Call. I'm a resident of Gasper Township. Grandparents on both sides of the family have been there since the late 1800s. And they would just have a conniption if they knew what this landfill looks like over there now. So why would you want to go ahead and take in another 200, 300, 400 ton a day? Make this landfill even more of a mess than it is now. If anything, put a transfer station in, ship it somewhere else. Close down your landfill. You guys have done everything you can, David and Chris, since you've been in office, to keep the recycling from going anywhere. We have no recycling program in this county to speak of. Do that, get rid of a lot of stuff you won't have to bury. But no, you guys have kicked and screamed the whole way. You don't want to do anything about recycling. You was talking about mining, the trash that's out there now. You want to do something smarter than mining, take care of it, recycle it. Get it out of there, don't put it in there. You won't have to reclaim it.
We have a recycling program,
It's
but there's a lot of
piss poor.
stuff.
It's piss poor.
Well, that's a matter of opinion. But
It is a matter of opinion, and I know what the hell I'm talking about. I've seen how these guys have worked. They hate recycling.
That's That's not true, Vaughn.
Oh, it is true,
They
David.
want
You
recycling
guys have
ladies right
kicked
in
this
the back
green
here.
because you want more tonnage going in that landfill every year. And that landfill needs to be closed. Now, if you find somebody to take that garbage cheap, ship it down the road to them, close that landfill so we don't have a mountain that's getting another 400 feet high or covers another 400 acres. Where do you live at?
Down the road here a little bit.
Whereabouts? Do you live here in Preble County?
About 6 blocks that direction.
Okay. Well, why don't you locate it in your backyard? Or take it up and put it at New Parish, or take it over to Chris's place. But Jasper Township don't need any more mess. It's a hell of a mess down there, fellows. If you take an elevation shot of it, it's probably one of the higher points in the county. And there's no sense in it. Recycle. Get rid of the shit.
So you're saying close?
Close the damn thing and let it go somewhere else. If you got somebody who'll take it cheaper, he's gonna put us into more debt on this damn landfill than what we can stand. It's already proved that you guys cannot run the landfill because you've lost money on the damn thing every time it comes up.
We need $10 million to close that landfill today.
They got money. You act like we got
Just
money.
keep the assessment going and everything. I really have a lot of respect for Rumpke's transfer station in Greenville.
Transfer it completely the hell out of here.
It's a really nice operation.
Close the landfill. Or put it in your backyard. You got a community out there, a block you're in. You've got a Boy Scout lake that's right below the landfill. You've got this village of Camden to pollute.
Okay, so Mr. Connell wants to close landfill. Okay, come on up.
And there will be a fight. If you guys try to expand this, you bet your ass we'll be right back at it again. And it wasn't a whole lot of fun. It cost y'all a lot of money last time. Now, we didn't spend much money on attorneys, but you all did. So keep that in mind.
Kevin Ford.
Thank you.
I guess the question I have, if I'm understanding this correctly, Randy, if we receive trash from Greenville as they go by from Rumpke, it would be a less tonnage rate than what the rest of the people in the county pay?
Initially, yes.
Yeah, I guess I have no problem with that.
And I say
I mean,
initially,
because
I
we just
say
had to raise
initially,
our rates.
I would say initially, once it's here, and once we've got this steady revenue, I am proposing that the rates are cut.
So then
Eventually-
our rates will be cut less than what Rumpke's rates would be to
So-
make up for the,
As
because then what we're doing,
As
as county people, we're paying for Rumpke to be able to dump.
We're
here
subsidizing
for less-
Rumpke.
For less price. I mean, that's kind of how that boils down, is we're
there is
subsidizing.
a
Rumpke
cost to
dump.
get into business,
Sure.
but in the long run, the outside waste should eventually allow us to have a lower cost for Preble County residents.
Should eventually.
Yes.
But
It
if
won't be,
doesn't,
it won't be day one, but it might be day 2 years later, we'll have it down. There's an adjustment period that's gonna be required.
Yeah, I guess I
And
just
I-
want to
and I
know my
understand that
opinion. I kind
concern.
of differ with that a little bit. That's kind of a rough one when we pay for Dark County's trash to be dumped less than what we pay. in our-
Why should we subsidize them?
Yeah, and I know what he's saying. I do. I know what you're saying.
We gotta pay the cost to
invest
get there.
Right, I understand that, but then when it comes time, then ours should, if it does come this way, then ours should drop below what they
Right,
pay
it looks
to
like-
bring that money back to the county.
Yes.
According to Brady's presentation, it looks like that eventually, and I don't like eventually, I don't like that word.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
that's-
nice to be able to predict, with fair amount of certainty, that the rates would drop and then the assessments would drop, so then it would cost the county.
Citizens less.
Citizens less.
Right, but then at some point, in my thought is, what we saved Rumpke to dump, we should make it back. So, let's say that theirs winds up being $26 a ton, then ours should go to 25 or 24.50 or something. Because if you invest money, you expect a return on it.
Absolutely.
And I guess I would expect a
That,
return on
that
that
is
money
the
at some
intention,
point.
that as we move
And I don't mean a
forward,
return by dropping my assessment, because that's not really returning my money, that's just, we're
Not
paying
taking
less.
it.
Yeah.
yeah. I think what he's getting at is if we continue at this, if we continue at this rate without doing anything, that assessment could well go up. So
Yes.
maintaining it for 2 years before it goes down makes more sense than then eventually going up. And I think we can probably expect that to happen. Is that what you're
That
getting
is
at?
my intention.
I just want people to watch the video to understand that.
What was the total of the assessment again for the year?
1.9 million.
So just if we didn't, we closed the landfill and it cost 12 million to shut it down, we could just keep the assessment for 6 years? Be done with it? Oops.
Theoretically,
That's what we should have done 12 years ago,
well,
looking back in
you would want
retrospect.
to, I mean, you'd want to fill up,
When you
The
went and looked at
existing
all the
landfill.
landfills, you should have went up to Rumpke's and looked at the transfer station, which would have been more than adequate for Preble County.
Yep.
To begin with. Was it?
Close it.
I'm getting tired of being the only one who walks up here. You know, what he just brought up is 6 years, at some point in the next couple of years, we decide, hey, Rumpke, take all our best way, take our trash. We're out of it. We're just gonna maintain the assessment, and then we're done. You're not only gonna have that savings, but Randy's gonna probably be out of job.
Yep, good
And,
deal.
Well, seriously, so there are savings in that respect. Has that ever been given into consideration? You know, I'd forgotten that, you mentioned that years ago. Close it.
Nobody
Close it.
listens
And
to
just
me,
have
Jeff, I
this
make too
maintain
much
the
sense.
assessment till that closure fee is taken care of. And you're out, the county's out of it, you're out of the, it's not an issue. I don't know, maybe there's some other liability there, but it seems to me that that might be something that.
and
throw
that is,
in there.
I mean, honestly, that is something, we own the landfill. County taxpayers, county
Politically, it's a
residents own the
hot potato.
landfill
But-
collectively. And so we
but
would
Jeff,
have to decide if we wanted to stay in the business or not.
Remember 12 years ago, I mean, even what Eric's talking about, there was like 5 or 6 scenarios that
Yeah.
each committee took. Part of it was closing, part of it was leasing.
And I was not part of those committees. I did a website for the opposition.
And we listened to the
yeah.
people, and that's the way it's gone until we had to increase the
Well,
prices.
and you know.
And we're not getting the tonnage that we thought we were
And,
getting.
Exactly.
No argument there. And this is the
One at a
same
time.
problem with talking, eventually, we're going to have, hopefully, this. We were 12 years ago, we were hoping that we were gonna maintain at 42,000, 50,000 tons a year. That was a legitimate hope at that time. It obviously hasn't borne out. So it's possible that these figures don't progress. Possibly, Rumpke and these guys won't come, or they won't come to the extent that we hope that they will. So if you close it, maybe it's time for more committees. Is it really worth it every decade to have a commission change because of irate voters over the landfill? Maybe it's something just to consider again, because that assessment is a drag on business. I'm sure it's a drag on taxpayers. If it's gone in 6 years, that might look pretty attractive at this point. I don't know. I don't live in Jasper, I
Yeah.
can understand it,
It'd be
If I
great if it
look
was
out my
done.
front door and see a 300-foot pile of trash, yeah, I'd probably feel like those guys do. It's not as big as concern us. But.
If it ain't your backyard, it really don't bother them much.
Yeah.
You know?
But, if you can close it in 6 years and be done with it, just maintaining the assessment, I think that's something that needs to be explored.
Absolutely does.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, anything else, and you're gonna have to walk up because Justin walking up. All right. Anybody else? Anything else? Randy?
Yeah, let me address the 42,000 tons.
Mhm.
Part of that reduction is the recycling.
Yeah, I know that.
Part of that's businesses moving out. Part of that is, and probably the big thing that occurred about 4 years ago, 2008, not only was there a crash in the market and businesses dropped, but there also became a big push by manufacturers, or two manufacturers, that they
Recycle.
started to abide by, which was reducing packaging. So there's less packaging that can get in the landfill, and there's also less packaging that can be recycled. So the combination is part of the reason that landfill receipts are down. I think recycling has been going up. although I think it's been steady the last 2 years. Yep. I think what you've done is just make an argument that
For something we can't foresee happening over the next decade. All those things you said are true, but something along that line can happen over the next decade to further affect it and still be in this position instead of being done with it and not talking about it and having expense and, I mean, the company's locating here, have to look at that assessment, that's gotta cost them a good pile of money.
yes, it is big.
Anything else, Randy?
I got nothing else? Guess I was asked for any input or next steps you would like for us to, we need to move forward one way or the other, or directions of some sort.
Well, what?
Listening.
I'm done talking. I'll let you talk. I'm new here. You guys have been around this block.
And that's why it's a political hot potato. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Well, you had here that you think you need to go ahead and still pursue some outside trash coming in at this moment without the tipper.
Yes, if we eliminate the exclusion, we could take route trucks. There
And
is
in
no-
that case, we could increase our tonnage. Even if we decided to close the landfill, we're gonna need to, hopefully, you agree with, we'll fill it up first and then close it. Or close it tomorrow. But,
Gotta dig some big holes right now if we will close it because we've got a lot
Right,
of
there's-
topography that
it
we
can't
have to
happen
make drain.
Do you think people from best way of Indiana won't come over here and get our trash?
well, we would
Take the
not,
flow control out.
we would not take the flow control off. It would be the exception, the
The
exclusion
exclusion.
for outside trash.
No, I mean if you close the landfill,
Oh, we
we
can.
wouldn't be having a problem with trash, somebody would come and get it. Somebody named Best Way of Indiana would come and get it cheaper than Rumpke's do.
They'll probably come and get it for cheaper than what you're putting it in the ground down there and have to maintain it.
We don't know that for sure.
Well,
Okay. So, is that what we're looking at?
just remember, guys, election's coming up, and everybody's gonna know about this, because you all starting it over.
Mr.
We went through this about 10 or 12 years ago, and guarantee you it'll come back to haunt you.
Well, we wanted to have a discussion and get your input and
Yeah, you want my input, all right.
talk about what the people of the county want, because you
Well,
own.
it's
you own
evident,
the
it's
landfill.
evident it ain't what this commission's thinking about, if you're even thinking about expanding the damn thing. We went through this back a few years ago, we wasted a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of money.
Right. And-
The county wasted tons and tons and tons of the taxpayers' money. And one thing I was wondering about, being we're on the landfill, how many years did it go on underneath Steve Simmons' control down there that they was stealing money from the cash register on their tickets for their pop slush fund? How long's that go on? How many 100,000 walked out of there? You don't know? Could anybody, could you tell me?
I
Nope,
have no way to know.
you have no way to know.
That's why we've instituted the changes that we've made down there.
Yeah. Well, if you all have saved that pop slush fund money, you probably had enough to build a new building and a new scale house.
My suspicion is it was not all that much, but
Well, it's still thieving.
Right.
Whoever, how much, if it was $4,
I will not argue that fact with you, sir. You are absolutely correct, but as far as the amount, I have no idea, but I don't think it was a
it went on
large.
for years down there. Somebody needs to figure it out. Don't waste the taxpayers' money anymore.
Well, okay, so first step would be to allow outside trash. First thing that we can do. I'd like to see the resolution. I'd like to see what was passed originally, just read it to make sure that
What I
what I
have,
think it says, it actually says.
and I don't know what is required to do that. I don't know if it's as simple as a commission decision or whether there's something else has to take place. I have not contacted Easton and Smith and asked them that specific question. I was waiting until I got some direction from you that you wanted to pursue that, so we could get into the details of it. I have attempted not to expend any more money than necessary. Obviously, I've spent a lot of time on it, but I've not actually spent money, funds from consultants and what have you, or a few bucks from T&M, but not very much. Until you gave me some direction on which way you want us to pursue, to explore, get details to take action.
Well, at this point, you got a lot of good information. I know you spent a lot of time, Randy. I've read through it a couple times, and I'd still like to go through, going through the presentation. You brought some things up and answered a few questions, so I'd like to think about some of these things a little bit
Okay.
further. It's a lot of data to try to absorb in a couple of days, so the ultimate thing is we have to make a decision in a very short time frame because of construction and things like that.
Yeah. This year's construction and next year's construction, it's critical to know where we're going and what we're doing. There are a few things I can do to wiggle a little bit, but my options are limited. If I know which direction you're thinking of going, and I can project out some options, but it would be nice to know a general direction that we're headed as soon as reasonably possible.
And I realize that, but just, as I'm sitting here, I know I've got more questions, but I'm trying to sort them out in my mind how to ask them. Like I said, there's several tables in here, and I've been bouncing from one to the other, so I'm a little bit.
Yes, I apologize for that. I probably went overboard on some of that. So.
I thought it was a very good document, it has a lot of.
Good document, I'm not saying that, I'm just saying as you were talking a couple of things, and I'm trying to find out where that's at in the report, because I remember seeing it, but just so I got it clear in mind.
Okay.
Well, we'll get on it and let you know.
All right.
Thank you, Randy.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Just trust the installation.